right, let's get started after lunch. Who of you is familiar with observability? All right, well then the majority of you are at the right place. Well, all of you, whether or not you're familiar with it or not. Who of you is using Splunk or Elasticsearch as a data lake to store all the data in? Who of you is using tools like Prometheus and Grafana to do some observability? All right, cool. Well, the goal of today is to really take a look at how can we mature the maturity of observability and monitoring. And what we'd like to do today is co-present, or Vilius will do the heavy lifting, of presenting how Danske Bank actually has grown their maturity and ultimately strive for a better customer experience. My name is Andreas Prins. I'm the VP of Product at StackState, and Vilius is joining me. He will introduce himself more extensively in a bit. So today what we'll do is take a close look first at the characteristics of Danske Bank. Not only at the company, but more in particular, where did they start the journey on observability and what were the needs and the organizational setup to succeed with observability and monitoring. Then I'll briefly introduce the monitoring maturity model just to understand the various levels that Danske Bank is growing towards, and then Vilius will take back and present actually how they've grown their maturity from one step to the other. And if time is there, we'll absolutely do some Q&A. All right, if you don't know StackState yet, please meet us at the booth 306. I've seen many of you already, and we had already the conversation with quite a few of you on maturing your observability, and today we'll see how Danske Bank did that in particular. It's up to you, Vilius, to introduce yourself and share a bit more on Danske.
Thank you, Andreas. Welcome everyone. So my name is Vilius Ellikas. I'm running Service Reliability and Observability Department in Danske Bank. Teams in my area are responsible for IT service quality and availability improvements, and we're doing it by developing observability services and integrating site reliability engineering practices within our organization. So I'll kick off with a quick snapshot of what Danske Bank is, if you are not aware of. So it is a biggest, largest bank in Denmark. Our core markets extends in other Nordic countries like Finland, Norway, Sweden. We do have thousands of customers and millions of thousands of customers. And the size of us is it's a bit more than 20,000 employees, so we're a pretty big one. Around 2015, we did endure in a big IT transformation journey where we insourced our services from IBM. And there has been multiple different things happening within those years, whereas we did achieve quite good business outcomes. And observability in that journey did have a play, and a few things from the contextual perspective. What are important is one, that we do have a pretty complex environment in our state. We've been early 2016, we embarked on a journey of private cloud. Now we all of us talk about the public clouds. At that time, we were one of the first ones who literally did it as vendors were saying we should do it. And we faced lots of reliability issues because products were not that reliable. We went through this cycle of improving and maturing both our services and monitoring, and that was like observability. That was one of the reasons why we embarked and we started thinking and experimenting with observability pretty early in our journey. And then we ended up building some architectures and technologies which integrates multiple different products, and that's a bit too complex. Then we would prefer it a bit more simple. And those two reasons, reliability and observability, was the key points why the reliability and the complexity challenges were the reason why we embarked on observability thing. So if you would imagine yourself in the heated IT crisis call, and you would, in those situations, we had a discussion a few years ago, what does monitoring observability mean to us? So monitoring would be something what you would expect to happen, and you only see that. And observability gives this another layer of hidden things, of being able to raise any hypothesis and try to understand where the things has gone wrong, and then answering those questions would lead to the faster resolution of the issues. From organizational perspective, we've gone through quite a journey, where before 2020, we had none of the teams having any observability titles, and then we did not know, as everyone else in the world, that the pandemic would hit, but we managed to squeeze in a huge reorganization just before pandemics and big resignation period. and we ended up having more than wanted observability team. So we took around a bit less than 2 years until we settled to the more effective organizational structure, and the usage of the actual service has been increasing steadily, and it is just the beginning. We do expect it to be utilized more and more. In order for users, and because we do have multiple users in our space, like not multiple, like that would be.
Vilius, before you move on, what was for Danske Bank the tipping point that all of a sudden the teams leveraging the observability service started to grow from 2 towards 10? What was the reason why all of a sudden that happened?
Yeah, I think 2 main reasons. One would be that we've already got pretty mature in our capabilities to provide services. I have people in our organization where we always are discussing whether it's the right time to start exposing the services or whether we need to do a bit better so that users would be more happy. I think we've gone through last years, there has been multiple discussions, so that was one of the tipping points where we already felt better, and I think the second big one is that we got this clarity of responsibilities and awareness of what is the observability service itself. So we started communicating, engaging our developers, like hundreds of them, and then sharing it. So having those two, I think, would be the mean why it was the case.
And at the top, there's also an interesting bump. Why did you grow to 3.5, and are you now back to 1 central observability team?
I think it just became a buzzword. Everyone wanted to do the observability. We had some teams being split during the organization where the same people were sitting doing the stuff. They were split in different places, and then it took a while for us to get aligned, and I think we're in a better place right now.
Okay.
Cool, thanks, Andreas. So, if we look into the observability service as a black box approach, in this case blue, you could look into the simple way that you ingest something, then you expect magic to happen, and then you have lots of users, so like both technical and non-technical users expecting something out of it. The major objectives of what observability service is addressing in our organizations two of those, either reliability or efficiency. Both of them are important in specific situations, but and as mentioned, we do have now lots of users in our scope, so it's not enough to say that there's a black box and just trust us and believe that we'll do something well. So under the hood of the observability service, we segregated all the toolings in some groups where some of them are directly exposed to our users and we expect them to know a bit more, like metrics and logging services and visualization service for the actual human beings to come and to get something valuable out of it, like all the consumption tools, we group them in that subservice space. And as many organizations, I think all of us facing too many tools at the same time, so we started positioning which tool sits in which life cycle phase. And like you can see, the ingesters who as well very consciously are segregating into the infrastructure technologies and applications, whereas the ingestion happens through one of the hidden services, where we start cleaning up the data, we're normalizing it, we put some enrichments in place, and in order for this to happen, the most critical, I think, differentiating service what we have in our toolbox today is discovery service. We had a few projects running in our organization which were called either CMDB or service mappings, where we wanted to have these relationships built with some vendors coming and trying to help us out to do that, but I think the major reasons of us being very custom complex or whatever everyone says, being that we ended up in some like operational teams which were facing the heat of firefighting. We ended up developing something ourselves, which now we have we can put all the topology in a JSON document, have any relationship we like, and having this as a foundation of us, we can feed into any other service, and all of those tool sets in other life cycles now are being able to you understand how they are related. So, and we, as you can see, we did go with this best of breed approach, target architecture of the tooling, where we do select the best tool sets, like you mentioned yourself. Like I saw lots of hands raised for Prometheus, Elastic, so we as well have users of those, and these were crystallized by our developers that they like it. There has been other offerings available, so we're in constant search of cherry picking the best tool sets for a specific purpose. So, and from now,
can you spend a few words on what's in the visualization? Why are there multiple visualization services listed here, and what is the function of each? Because that would tell something about how the users are interacting with
Yeah,
the observability service.
that is the case. We don't expect a single tool to provide all the visualizations, and I think that's what I sometimes see in the tool vendors, where they promise that they can do everything. They can do the metric visualization, they can do the logs, that they can do everything. But when we looked into our needs of the users, Grafana is de facto visualization tool for graphic creation. Like, you can do magic, and they have a huge amount of development spent, and they're putting new and new features. So if you want to visualize something, Grafana is the go-to tool. We tested out in multiple teams. Kibana is like for log searches, which is we are Hevelk user, so that as well ties in. It gives all what you need from whenever you want to find some logs, and we do have a self-service portals to do some like alerting mechanisms whenever you do want to create something. That's the place where we expect that as an interface for all the complex alerting mechanisms, that's where the place where the user should go and create that. And we have chosen StackState for a reason that it has a great topology capabilities, not only like to show what it is right now, but to do the time traveling. And it is the really good part about StackState that it is integratable. It's automation driven, so as long as you are in control of the data of relationships yourself, later on building those relationships with the tool, it is amazing. So I think that's that is the main positioning, and we are like doing things, and there's much more around it. So we're trying to get everyone to the level of the target state. Cool. I think that would be my part for now.
So different types of data and different types of visualization. But then the question is, what was the exact journey? Because you're now describing here kind of the end state or the current state, let's put it like this. And Danske went through a particular journey. And not only Danske Bank, but multiple of our customers have been through the journey of maturing their observability. And that's what's captured in the maturity model, the observability maturity model, to be more precise. And what we'll see here on the left side is the reliability as a goal and the customer satisfaction. And one of the key takeaways here from this maturity model is not to only focus for observability and monitoring on the technical aspect, being reliability and uptime, that's certainly important, but take the bigger goal in mind. What is it that I would like to deliver towards my end customers, whether or not that's external internet-facing applications or internal users? And articulating the needs for observability from that perspective would be helpful to make further decisions. What I would like to do is to go quickly through monitoring observability, causal and proactive observability with AIOps. And if you just need to say a few words, where would you plot yourself at the moment?
I'll extend myself much more during a bit later, but now we are just on the lead between level 2 and level 3, I'd call.
Excellent. Let's take a closer look in a bit. So the first level, and I do feel the entire market is aware of this, is the regular monitoring, or if you like, the APM type of monitoring, where we answer the most fundamental question, is my system working? And we're gathering quite a bit of data, more traditional data if you like, on availability, performance and capacity. And this is important because this data will definitely give you the first answers on how the system behaves, and yeah, if you need to take action to remediate when something goes wrong. But obviously, it's not telling you a lot about the deeper insights that you might need to have. And we've seen already with Danske Bank that there's a lot more data collected, and that's actually happening at a level 2. So whenever you say I have my monitoring in place, so you can answer the question, is my system working? Then obviously the next question is around the corner. If there is an issue, you not only want to see that there is an issue, but you also need to know more information, more of the inner workings, if you like, of your components that you're actually serving. And then metrics, traces and logs are there to start helping you out, build a better understanding of what is causing the issues that your customers or your systems or your engineering teams might face. And the more we move towards a rapid changing environment, and all of you are moving into that direction, the more important it becomes to capture and track all this data. And that's why I asked in the beginning, do you guys use Splunk or Elasticsearch? That's typically where all these data points go into, and where you try to start building dashboards and try to start answering the questions that you have on top of. What we notice when talking to many of our customers, that is actually not enough, because the different components, or the different data points if you like, yes, are connected to a single component, but how do the components relate to each other? And Vilius just mentioned the topology visualization. What we believe is if you need to start answering the questions more efficient or more accurate on why a system or why a component is failing, you not only need to have the metrics, you also need to have them related to each other. And that's where topology comes around the corner. Building a map of all your dependencies and all your components that tell you something how your entire stack is built up, and then start correlating the metrics towards that. It makes the invisible connections possible. And let me give you an example. Most of you will be familiar if you're using some cloud technology. Let's imagine there's a security group managed by a single DevOps team somewhere in the cloud side of the house, the cloud teams. And there are other DevOps teams out there who are developing particular applications and are dependent on that little security group. And imagine that would change. If you ask your DevOps team who's deploying and maintaining your web application, utilizing that component, they are unaware of what's actually happening because the change was not a mistake, was not an error, nothing goes wrong, there's no performance, there's nothing happening. Your system is still up, it's still available, but you can't use it. If you would like to do this on a level 2, it's super hard to find the right metrics and more important, to correlate changes that are happening throughout your entire stack towards the issues that you're facing. And topology is a helpful instrument to really understand. And then the more you go into cloud and container or serverless, we know that it's changing all the time. Components come and go, and it very well might be the case that an issue is caused by a component that disappeared. So what we believe is if you really go to causal observability, you not only need to track dependencies, you also need to start tracking them over time, because with components coming and going, you need to have that insights to answer the question super accurately, what did change and is that potentially the cause of my issue? And that in particular matters because we continuously would like to increase the reliability of the stack. And then the final level, and we'll hear more about that from Vilius, is if you have metrics, logs and traces and they are correlated, then you really have a good understanding and start applying all different type of questions. For example, support the human being in root cause analysis. By traveling a graph, by understanding what has happened and all the changes and events, you can start answering what potential event or change caused the issue that we're currently looking at. And that's the idea behind AIOps, or if you like, reducing the alert storms into systems like ServiceNow or into PagerDuty and all these type of applications. By understanding your data and understanding what it actually means, you can better and more accurately make decisions. Proactive observability, detecting anomalies before the real issue starts to happen. Because we have a lot of metric data, we store all the metrics, you can now start analyzing are there any anomalies, and by knowing on which component the anomaly is happening, you can also identify what is the stack higher up or lower down that might cause the issues. All right. You think, well, there's a supplier up on stage articulating how the market looks like. That's fine. But there are many Gartner papers that will share more or less the same story. And we also did some research with TechStrong Group, really assessing where the market is. And let's raise a few hands. Don't be shy if you're on level 1, 2, or 3, or 4. Who would say, well, I'm kind of at the level 1 monitoring, just knowing the state of my systems, knowing what's going on, but that's about it. Cool. I don't know if it was exactly 35%, but it was certainly not a lot more. Who says I'm at the level of observability? I'm using tools that collect metrics, logs, traces, or a few of them, and help me to better determine why stuff is failing. All right, still quite a bit of people. Again, 34% from the research that we did. So very similar patterns here. And then the causal observability, having the ability to correlate the data towards all the components and have an understanding of how the components depend on each other. That's what we assess at 19%. And then AIOps, although it's there for many, many years and people talk about it, it's still really hard to implement. And what we think, it's really hard to implement because the data isn't that structured. Many companies, I mentioned that already, end up somewhere at the end of level 2 with a big Splunk implementation, being able to build dashboards on top of. But what is helping you to define the structure in that tremendous amount of data? And we believe that causal observability is a way to start enabling more AI, if you like, or the machines guiding the humans to get there. And let's see how Danske Bank did that.
Thanks, Andreas. So back when I showed you an iceberg view, I think now you're in all of us are in a much better place, that there's a better assessments and the definitions of what maturity of observability could look like. I think that the model from StackState is pretty structured, which can have a more constructive discussion with the organization. So we took that model as well ourselves, and from the very first moment what we asked having a discussion for is that level 4 or AIOps is not something what we're trying to achieve today. We did have more than one, so I think 2 different vendors coming to us years ago saying, whatever you need to do is just feed in any data you have. The more data, the merrier, and then we'll show you all the anomalies. So we ended up having anomalies in addition to all the false positive things, whatever we have from level 1, level 2. So we stopped those for now, and we said, okay, we need to focus on doing the basics right, level 2, and then as long as you have tools you can trust on doing the correlation, that is not the magic, that's the mathematics, that's algorithms, where you can, as long as you know how things related, that should give you a value of something going wrong in the infrastructure, hundreds of alerts shooting out. If those would have those simple labels and then algorithms knowing how they're related, that's not the magic, that's just simple technology. So that's where we are right now. We do focus on level 3, and even though it may look like it is an equal steps to reach level 3, there is a big difference between all of those, and I think that the majority of the effort is being spent, at least from our side, on level 2. We managed to go with at least 2-3 platforms which has lots of visibility on applications already. We cleaned it up. We can see all the relationships. Grafana shows us already the value of whenever I say application, like the biggest one we have in Danske Bank was like mobile pay. If mobile pay is down, you can go into the dashboard, and the technicians who understand how things work, they can already correlate and relate it through the graphical approach. We are not there yet that our tooling themselves can do stuff. So, but that's why we try to assess ourselves where we are. And if I would assess our tooling capabilities, it is between 1 and 2. So automation can do sometimes up to level 2 observability. However, if I take the best people we have in our organization who can do troubleshooting, understands technologies, has the memory of the topology in their heads, we are somewhere between level 3 and level 4. The most sophisticated issues today which are happening, if we have the right people assigned, they can do the analysis in minutes by going through the tools. So our next 2 years goal, I'd say, is to get our tool sets educated to at least the level what our people can do, and hopefully all the AI and ML algorithms can help them do even better. So that is the assessment of ourselves from this perspective on our side.
Before you move on, in all the levels you called out MTTR and availability as the 2 elements to measure. Can you elaborate a little bit why both availability and MTTR matter for you as a lead setting up this practice?
The very needed question these days for us ourselves. We in Danske Bank, we're still discussing on how can we, in a simple manner, measure the quality of our services. So availability we are seeing as one of the most important candidates to reflect what is our capability to deliver under the promise to our users from the quality perspective. It is about uptime, about if you define that your application should respond within 200 milliseconds, that number should show you a quality perspective, and MTTR is a measure which could show you capability to respond to the incidents. When something happens, earlier or later it will happen, so that should be a measure of how fast you react and recover things. Cool, thanks for the question. So going next, so upon reflecting our journey, I think one important thing what I think everyone should not miss is that you need to focus on human-ready correlation capability. You have to have human and tooling capabilities showing the value that you can do the correlation. Whenever you have that, then you can go to this phase where you start focusing on the tooling correlation capability. And we are just about at that point where we see the value. We have some front-running development teams, some infrastructure teams who already see the value of correlation. And then now we are cleaning up the data to get there. In order to be more structured to achieve that goal, it is always good to put that in some project plans and then assess yourself. Agree how would you assess that maturity model. So we like at the moment we said like logs and metrics they can achieve on level 2 up to level 2. We need to, and we are saying as long as you have a centrally things available instead of going to each server and checking the logs, you need to make sure that this is centrally. That's level 1. Level 2 would be all the clean data with enrichment in place, and that's a big effort to do. But few platforms will already manage to do, and this is our next focus areas to complete. And same with applications, they would have a bit different mechanisms of identifying what is the level for each of the inputs. Having said that,
can I ask one more question?
Of course.
As an agile coach, I absolutely would dislike this slide, right? Because I'm all in for agility and autonomy for DevOps teams. And now you're saying, yeah, I need to measure myself and I need to structure, I need to conform myself to the schema that the central observability team sets up. How do you balance as an organization, on one hand, the desire to grow in maturity and setting up a construct like this, and at the same time allow teams or have the belief that DevOps teams should be autonomous? What is your take on that?
It is not an easy challenge to get everyone on board with ourselves. And we in our organization, we had multiple years of experience where you would have a central team developing something, and then you would see other teams spinning up their own projects. Like we have an example with tracing. We do have a tooling which is not delivering upon expectations, and it's pretty good right now that some of the teams has built the ones they like, and now we are partnering up with them. So we created a forum where we invite everyone. We try to start talking what does observability means to all of us. And it is a journey. You have to get them on board with you, and everyone has a huge interest to get something central available which they want to use. Users like developers, they are demanding. So we've gone through a few iterations in an agile spread approach where we have opinionated people, and this in the industry as well. Industry has moved like there's a de facto tools like Prometheus, PromCurl is something what everyone would expect to get the metrics search to be in this way. So we are on the journey. We're not there yet, and we are I think that one of the reasons or the approach is how we are doing today. We're not only showing slides today. We do have a working product in a smaller scale, and we're already giving them access to firewall logs. They can go and do the search what is happening within their application. So being practical and keeping the communication is, I think, the way how I expect us to go to the level 3 and 4. Cool. So to summarize all of our experiences, few things what we learned from the in a painful approach is that whenever we're doing the reorganization, we may save some time if you include all the people. So I think we did lose some time on our perspective. Then AIOps tools. It is as if you pass and process data, you won't get the expected outcomes. Discovery service, I can only emphasize that that is the place where you can, whatever you call it, CMDB or service mapping or whatever, it is a place where you can get your intelligence to your tool sets and focus on the human-ready correlation capability. The things which either we were lucky of or which helped us out, we did something right, that we went further within observability services is that we did have or grown and managed to retain our critical talent, and there was always organizational support to focus on that objective. There was of course, one of the motivators, external motivators, was that our services were, the metrics of our reliability service of IT services were pretty low, so there was obvious thing that was the means to solve that issue. Today it's more about achieving the best ever results, and then I think what we learned as well was that the feedback loop we managed to create between the people who are creating the tool sets and who are using, sometimes it used to be the same person initially, and then later on we split it into the two teams. And as I mentioned earlier, we already have a scaling, so like the solution working in the smaller scale, and we can scale up going forward. So that would be it from my side.
Thanks, Vilius. There's still time for one question to Vilius, so if someone has a question, feel free to raise right now. If not, we'll be around here just outside. If you are more interested, grab the QR code here. Genevieve will be at the door, or more StackState colleagues, with a little card with a QR to assess yourself, or to download the full white paper if you need to have a more extensive readout on the maturity model we just presented. On behalf of Vilius, thank you for joining, and enjoy the conference.